Okay.
Okay. No problem. Um, okay. Okay. So, so like we already discussed, so this week basically what we're going to do is just like a hackathon. So it's not really like a really competitive hackathon, but it's basically just to see how we can do basic things in PyTorch, like loading data sets, training, saving our models, and then submitting a CSV file. That's on Kaggle. So we'll also get used to how we'll also see how we can use Kaggle. So basically, performing or participating in hackathons. Because honestly, one of the issues that many people have currently and before even is submitting on such platforms like Kaggle or Zingy. So submitting is very important too. It's very important to get those things right. So we're just going to do something like that. So it's going to be from today till 5 p.m. tomorrow. So like I mentioned already, it will be in teams. So from the way I'm seeing it, it seems like we're not that much that's to fit into the list that I posted that time. But I think we should just try and form teams of let's just say 3 or 4. Or what do you think? Because basically what I want is for everyone to participate. You said,
Your mic, I can't hear you. I think it's breaking up.
oh, is it better now? Or how is it?
I think it's from his network.
Wait. Okay, sure, let me try switching. Okay. Right now. Okay. Wait, how is it now? Is it better? Okay.
Still the same.
Is that? I didn't hear you.
I can hear you, but it's not clear.
Even as of now, it's still not clear.
I think it's his network. The rest of us can hear you fine.
I didn't hear you. What are you saying? Oh, okay. Because even I noticed that yours was cracking. Okay, let me just continue. So, where was I? Yeah, so I said the hackathon. Yeah, the hackathon will be from today till like 5 p.m. So I don't know. I need suggestions. So how many do you think is better for us to be able to like participate and no one will be left behind? Like teams of 4 or 3.
I think since last week we were 8 here. This week again we are 8. So teams of 2, 4 teams of 2. I don't know if that'll work.
Okay, 4 teams of 2. Okay.
2.
Then if there's any increase, if any other person joins us, it can increase.
Can join. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so that would be, so I'll leave it for you guys to like decide on who to pick. But I think it's best to pick based on skill level. I don't really know. So no one will be left behind, sort of.
Well, do we really know our skill level yet?
Okay. That should be a discussion for ourselves. I don't know how we can do that.
Okay.
Okay, so the thing is that like it's not really going to be hard because I already created the starter notebook for us. So what we just need to do is just like fixing things by ourselves. But before I go through the code itself, I'll just like introduce us to Kaggle itself. So like how many of us have used Kaggle here? Like are we all familiar with Kaggle? Okay, but aside that, I'll just go through it. So I'll say it is. So this is the Kaggle platform itself. So as you all know,
yeah, I've used it once.
Okay, nice. So I'll just like go through everything here that is already set. So I will just, I think I should open it in the first meeting. Okay. So the challenge is an image classifier problem. So there are 102 classes, as you can see here. So there are 102 species of flowers that we are going to build a model, pre-trained, of course, that's in transfer learning, to classify each of those flowers. So the number of classes are much, that's 102. So this time around, it's not cats and dogs, that's just 2 classes. So we're going to build a model to predict each of those classes with high accuracy. So first of all, whenever you are going through any competition, it's very important to go through the description, the evaluation, and other things too. So for it, I've already explained what we're going to do. So this is just like a basic introduction. So I'm going to classify 102 classes of flower species. So for the evaluation, we're just going to use accuracy. So when I mean accuracy, it's just whether you got it or not. That's just basically it. So it would compare with the actual submission file that is already stored on Kaggle. So the image format is like this. You have the ID itself and then the class. So this class will be ranging from 0 to 101 probably. Yeah, since I want 102 classes, so it's ranging from 0 to 101. Or I don't think it's 0, no. It's from 1 to 102. There's no 0 class. So that's what we're going to do. Then for the data set, now you can download it from this. So this is the API to download it from. I'll still walk through how you can download it from Kaggle. Then, so when you download this file here, it's a zip file. When you download it, so it will be like this AI6 deep learning challenge.zip. Then you should know how to unzip on Colab. So just using exclamation mark, then unzip the name of the file. So you can unzip it like that. Then when you unzip it, you find out that inside the folder, you have your train folder, your test folder, your sample submission, and cast to name.json. So just to explain of them, your train contains folders of each of the classes, like we've already discussed. Then your test just contains images without classes. So that's the whole point. So that's what we're going to classify and submit here on Kaggle. Then you have your sample submission. This sample submission is just like a format, how it would be. So, okay, I think I need to log in here. Let me just come here. So this is it here. So your sample submission is like this. So these are each of the images in the test folder. So all these images, the goal is to make your prediction, that's build a model rather. After building a model, get your validation, that's compulsory, you should. Then you then predict on the test data set. So when you predict on the test data set, the result is what you're going to put in this CSV file, and the map is the actual class. So this is just the format of how it should be. Then you have your cast name JSON. So this is not going to be important for the submission purpose, but it's just important if you want to like map each of the images. Let's just say you're plotting and you want to see the actual name of the species instead of seeing just 1, 2, 3, 4 and all. So these are the different types of flower itself. So it's just a JSON file that maps the ID, or rather the class value, to the name of the flower. So then you have your train, like I've said. So these are the folders that contain the classes, and you have your test, your unlabeled images. So I'll also walk us through how we can download from this. So then the next thing, okay, nothing here. So for the leaderboard now, like I just did a very, very simple, build a simple classifier to create a baseline score. So I expect that everyone should make submissions that would be higher than this. That's 0.9. So that's like 91% accuracy. I expect higher than this, like 95, which are the boss, maybe 100%. Then rules, you can go through it. So basically, this is just it ends by 5 o'clock. Then for the team, since you already agreed that it will be a team of 2, when you log into Kaggle, you can merge yourself with the other person. So what you just need to do is to search for the name of the person. Okay, this is where you create a name. You create a team name. After creating your team name, you then invite others by inputting their Kaggle username. So it will show when you put the actual username. So you can then add other people to your group. So like we've said already, it is a group of 2. So yeah, to get the data now. So there are 2 ways you can get the data, but I don't know that it's just me, maybe because I'm the host or something, but I want you guys to try it. So with Kaggle, when you see this now, so this is the link to download it directly from Kaggle to your Colab notebook. Then you also need a Kaggle API key. So I'll just show you here. Let me first run this. So what you need to do first of all is to go to your profile on Kaggle here, then accounts. Then from your account here, you see where you can create a new API here. So this API is what you use to download it on stuff like Colab or any other notebook. So when you click on create API, new API token, it should pop up to download or save let me show you what it will look like. So pop up to download this file, kaggle.json. So if you can see it here, kaggle.json. So that's the file you should download. So that file is what you are going to use for authentication purposes whenever you want to download from Kaggle. So I already loaded it here. I already uploaded that in kaggle.json in this place. So this is, I'm going to make use of it to download the data set from Kaggle directly. Let me just do this. So definitely we want our data set to be on a Google Drive so we can come back to it anytime without Colab clearing it. So here you are going to specify the part where we are working on. So for mine is week 6. So I'm just going to put week 6 here. Okay, very mounted. So okay, so this is how I'm working it. Then importing files. So this is just importing the libraries of make use of. Then now this part here, I don't know if I've explained it before, but this part is very, very critical when building machine learning models. So reproducibility is very, very important. So we want our code to be reproducible anytime we run our code again. So if you want to run your code like 700 times, it give you the same, what they call it, it give you exactly the same results. So remember we spoke about this manual seed, so that the way to keep it is the same way to make use of for every time we run that same code. So the thing is that, for instance, if you participate in a competition now and probably get a very high score, let's say you come first, and at the end of the competition, whether it is Kaggle or Zindi, they want you to provide them with your actual source code. That whenever they run it, they should get that output, because that's the whole purpose of the hackathon. So you want your code to be reproducible for every time you run it. So you always have to set this. So these are just like seeds. You can specify your seed value. You can put 2019 if you want. You can put 4. You can put anything you want. I'll just 2019 or 2020. So you need to use that. So another important thing to do is to check if code is available. But I'm going to share this notebook, so you don't need to set it again because I already did that for it. Then now this is the part I'm talking about. So in order for you to get from Kaggle, you need to first install Kaggle, then run these commands like from here to here. So this just basically creates a Kaggle directory within your directory. Then it copies this kaggle.json, because this is what is important here. If you check it now, so like it's already in this directory, so I can make use of it. So copy the kaggle.json file, make sure it's in that directory, and then put the name of the competition. So not the name, this command here, because this is what you're going to use. So by clicking on it, it copies it. Then you can paste it here. It's the same thing already. So when you run this thing, start downloading the data set. But I don't know whether it's just because it's me or or I'm the host or something. But I want you people to try it because it's easier to just download it this way. What it was doing was I was downloading the images directly to my directory instead of downloading the whole zip file. So let me just run inside. So what I'm saying. So normally it's just meant to download the zip file, but for me it's downloading the images individually. So you can see it here. It's downloading the images. I'm just going to stop it. But try it. If you download the images, then it's best to then use the second option I'm going to show us here. Okay. So the second method now is this one here. So there's this app on Chrome. So it's one of these Chrome applications. So you can download it from their store. That's their Chrome App Store here. So it's this one called Widget. That's the name. The name is called Widget. So all you just need to do. The thing about this one is that, for example, Zindi, you don't have this collab to Zindi in the way Kaggle has it. So with Kaggle, you can use their API to download directly from Kaggle. But Zindi, you can't. So you just have to use this method compulsorily for Zindi. So how it works is that you just need to download it. So if I click on download all now, it will attempt to download the zip file, which is the full image dataset. So when I click save, all I just need to do is to cancel it. Then this call widget will have already copied the URL to download it. So I'll just copy it from here and then come here. Don't forget your exclamation marks here, then paste it. So when you run it, it downloads the zip file directly. So which is this. So I've downloaded it already. So this one to works, whichever one you want to use. So if I refresh this, you should see the zip file. Then from there, you can then unzip it and you have your data set. Okay, it seems I've not loaded here, but you should be able to see it from the terminal. Yeah, so this is the file here. So whichever one you decide to use, it works. Then you'll zip the file and you have your data set. Your data set will be something like this now. So you have your flower data, and then you have your capsule name.json, your submission file, your test, and your train. So now to then go up with the remaining ones. So this is how you can load it. I already put it here, how you can load that capsule name. Let me just run inside safe. Yeah. So this is what it's like. So it's a JSON file where you can map each of the classes to their IDs or to their numeric representation. So now it's to load the data set. So first load the data. I'm not going to run this part. So you just be the ones to run it. So if you specify a number of workers, in most cases it's 0. You specify your batch size. You can choose 8, you can choose 16, you can choose 32, you can choose anyone, but it's just best to put it in bit size. That's byte size, like 8, 32, 16, 64, 128, stuff like that. Then you specify your train folder. This is just the part you already know about. So you specify your train is. Then now with PyTorch now, in this case now, we are not fortunate to get our train validation and tested in separate folders. But with PyTorch, you can break your train into 2, which is your train and your validation. The same way scikit-learn, train test split work. But this is how it works in PyTorch. First of all, I'll just import these things. So this is what I'm going to use to sample the train data before splitting it. Then these are normal transforms. So first of all, these are transforms. There are different transforms. You can check PyTorch documentation, because I want us to do that to see other types of data augmentation techniques, because basically that's what improves our model. That's what improves our model accuracy. So I just said these default ones. So this one works, but you can also add more to improve accuracy and see the results. then you load our data set. So this is now our train data. After we finish loading our data from the directory, which is train, and applying our transforms to it, so we have our train data. So now to then split your train into train and validation, you first get the length of our train data. Then from there, get the indices. So this basically, I think, is a range of values, is a list of values from, is a list of values, which is, if you run this in Python, basically just create a list of all the counts from 0 to the length of the numeric value. So then from there, we then shuffle our indices after shuffling it, so that we don't we randomly split it. That's the purpose of this one. So this list returns a list of all the indices, something like this: 0, 1, 2, 3, and so on, something like that. So after doing that, we then split it here. So this split now is then our validation size by that number. So this is just basic mathematics. That you want to find 0.2 because it's a fair validation. I'm giving okay, you can use anyone you want, but if I decide to use 0.2, so it means I'm dividing my data into, let's just say we have 10 images. So 0.2 is like 20% of 10. So which is 20 divided by 100 multiplied by 10. So 20% of it is just 20 itself, or rather 2, since it's 10. 20% is just 2 out of 10. Then we shuffle our indices. Then we divide our training and validation set. So now we already have the two separate entities. That's for training and validation. Then from there, we use this PyTorch function, which is this subset random sampler. So this is what you then use to then load your train data into this and your test data. So this is how we then define our split for each of them. Then we then load it into our data loader. So your data loader takes in your train data itself, your actual train data, the batch size, you specify your batch size. And this part is now where it specifies which one is for train and which one is for test by loading the sampler, which we've done here. So remember, this is our train sampler. Okay, so you put it here, the number of workers, you already specified it up. So the same thing for validation loader too. So you pass in your train data, but when it comes to the sampler, you specify it is validation and valid sampler, which you created here. So that's how we load it. Now we have our train data loader and our validation data loader. So if you run this, this will just give us like a plot of our images plus the transforms we've added. So you see our image plus the additional transforms we've added to it. So then for the model building, like we've discussed already, so I'm going to use pre-trained model. We have the notebook for pre-trained model. So what you just need to do is to load your pre-trained model, understand the structure, and then modify your changes. So for this part now, this particular cell is just for us to see the model we want to use and know what to change. Remember, I specified that different models have different keys for representing each of the layers. So I remember that ResNet's own is model.classifier if you want to the classifier class, or rather no, model.fc. ResNet is model.fc. VGG, DenseNet, they are model.classifier. So you have to like see it and know which one is for it. So in order not to download the weight, since you're just looking at it, you set your pre-trains to false when you're loading it. Then for here, you just print your model, then you can see the key, then you can decide to check the one for a free printed layer. But it's just best to set your pre-train to false so it does not download. Instead, it just load this architecture here. Then when you now want to train, that's where you can then set pre-train to true. You should set pre-train to true so that it will download the weights of the pre-trained model. So that's what I'm going to train on. So we'll set it. Then the next thing is to then freeze the parameters. So you can check previous notebooks. There's the code for freezing the parameter. You just add it to it. Freeze the parameters. Then your model output size. For ResNet, I think ResNet 50 is 2048. But you just check it from your architecture to know what the output of the last layer before the fully connected layer was. Because that's where you continue and that's where you change from. So you specify the output. Oh, no. This is the number, this is the category. So in this case, it's 102. So you can just write 102 here. Then this is what I'm talking about. So this one is the input to the classifier, which I was talking about previously. So you just take your model and see what it's outputting. So that's what you just pass here. Then you create your sequential model. So what you just do is that you load your input size, specify it, and break it down to when you get to 102, since that's the amount of classes you have for a classifier. Then what you then do next is to then load your classifier, which is this, to your model.fc. So this then changes it from their own to your own. Then move your model to CUDA, to move it to CUDA, print your model to see what it looks like. Then you can try to use any other loss function, but in most cases, you can just use cross entropy. Adams Optimizer perform very well. Then always note that it is model.fc.parameters that you are optimizing for. So remember, we do not want to change the weight of the previous layers, those feature layers, which is the CNN itself. We just want to change for our multi-layer perception, which is the fully connected layer. So that's why we do model.fc.parameters. If we're changing for everything, we just do model.parameters. But in this case, it's just for the classifier. Then this learning rate scheduler, I think you can read about it, but it also helps too. What it does is that it keeps breaking down the learning rates, making it smaller and smaller and smaller as it keeps training. So that's what learning scheduler does. So it helps us not to overfit too, and it makes your model learn too. So it's just an optimization method. So this is the training part. You can go through it. What I just want us to do is that after just the competition, I want us to go through how these things are working. So if you look at it now, because of time, you won't want to validate on every part of your validation loader. So your validation loader is also broken into batches like your train loader, but you don't want to go through everything because of time. So what you just do is that if you check it now, if you want to go through each of the labels, or rather each of the batches, we do for sample labels in train loader. For instance, it could be validation loader, it could be test loader, but this just iterates through each of the batches. While this one, when you use this iter in brackets, valid loader.next, this just loads a single batch. So that's what we're going to be validating on for every epoch we go through. So what we'll do is that we'll train, test it, and get our validation loss. Then I also wrote the code for saving your model. So look at it. We have a validation loss minimum and a validation loss. Validation loss minimum is what will make us know the validation and the particular epoch that give us the minimum validation. So at that point, we save the model. So how it works is that if you keep training now and you specify to go for 10 epochs, and at the 5th epoch, that was where the best validation loss was gotten, it will save the model. So even if it gets to the 10th epoch, your model might have overfitted or not, but let's just say overfitted. You want to use the one where it gives us the best model. You could use early stopping, or you could just save your model at that point because it gives you the minimum validation loss. So when you're done training, you can then load that model back, so you have it. So that's just it here. So you get your training loss, you get your validation loss. Check it. If your validation loss is less than your minimum validation loss, you would save the model and then update that minimum validation loss to that validation loss. So that's just how it is. So always note that whenever you want to evaluate, you move your model to evaluation mode, which is this model.eval. Then when you want to train, you move it to train, model.train. But by default, it is in model.train, unless you specify. So now with this, you can plot your training loss and validation loss. It will help you know whether your model is overfitting or not. So like I've said, is this model complexity graph. So once you realize that your validation loss is going high and your training loss is still going down, then your model is overfitting. So was someone saying something? Okay, so you should just check and make sure that both of them are decreasing together. So that's the whole point of this. So now this is what I was talking about. So you then load your best model. So I've already created the directory if you check it here. So this here, if not model.exist, is to make the model directory. So it will be something like this. Okay, I already did it. So you have a model directory where your models will be saving. Then when you're done training, you can then load that best model. then you then confirm validation. So at this point now, you validate on the full validation set this time around, not just a single batch. You go through each of them and get your validation loss and get your validation error and accuracy. So this part is the most critical part of it, because first of all, in the competition, the maximum number of submissions you can make per day is 20. So you do not want to exhaust your submission, just putting random submissions and hoping that it will be better or it will be good, that kind of thing. So it's best to fully depend on your local validation, which is the one that is in your code here. Because another thing to note is that there's the private and there's the public leaderboard. The private leaderboard is where you be actually judged. The public leaderboard is where you just see the initial leaderboard, where you see who is first, who is second. Well, it just contains 30%, or okay, in this case, it's 40%. It could be less sometimes, depending on whoever sets it. So it's just 40% of the actual test data set. So a model can actually be performing very well, but when you run the overall performance, you realize that your model drops. So you can be first, and at the end of the competition, you might drop to last because let's say your model was overfitting to public leaderboard, that kind of thing. So it's best to always fully depend on this, so you know if your model is actually improving before you make submissions, that kind of thing. So then here is where you then view the results. So with PyTorch now, if you want to see the actual mapping to the class, so one thing to note is that each of the classes, remember we mentioned that there were 1 to 100 and 100 and okay, I'll just show you so you see what I'm saying. Let me just copy this. So this part is very, very critical. So I also mentioned this here when we're talking about the yeah, so remember to map the model's prediction to the folder format rather than submitting a PyTorch output class. So I'll just explain what this means now. So here, if we do this now, let's just say I'm using a batch size of 16 and validation of 0.2. Yeah. Then our training directory is that, and we load our data sets. Okay. Okay, let me just leave it safe and secure. Okay. So now, this is what it will look like. So we don't get confused. So now this thing, you know, these are training data here. Before we move it to the loader, these are training data, which is the image we've loaded. Then each of the classes are this here, they are the key of this particular dictionary. So training data.class to IDX, like name is class to IDX. So it is the class, which is the name of the folders, to PyTorch ID. So PyTorch gives each of those classes ID. So remember that when you put files in folders like this, it is not arranged like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, that kind of thing. Let me show what I mean. For instance, okay, flat it down. So you can see how it is now. It's not alphabetically the way we do it, or no, rather, it's not alphabetically. It's not arranged in that ascending order the way we know it. So it's arranged in terms of the first value. So this is 1, this. So you won't see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, something like that. So this is actually how it is arranged by default, and this is how it will be loaded. But what PyTorch does now is that because it's arranged in that format, it will give it its own ID. So it's important to know the difference between the two of them. So this is the actual IDs. These are the actual values for each of the folders or classes. But when PyTorch converts it, it will be like this: 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. The actual way is meant to be. So if you put cat and dog folder, PyTorch will put it as 0 and 1. So you know that 0 is for cats, 1 is for dogs. So we always need to make sure that whenever we are making prediction, PyTorch should predict it as each of these IDs here. So if the class was 1, PyTorch should call it 0. If the class was 10, it should call it 1. So whenever we make predictions, we should not forget to convert it back, which I'm going to show here. So there's already the code for it. All you just need to do is just go through it. So if you see it here now, so first of all, what I did was to invert the thing. So initially it was the class to the PyTorch ID. So if you run this function, this code rather, it should convert it to the ID to class. So the ID will be first, then the class. So if the prediction is 1, you just need to do is just pass 1 to this dictionary, and it will give you the actual class it's meant to be. So this is it here. So just to validate the results, these are our model itself. Then these are our prediction values. So after we pass our data to the model, we get our output. Then we get this torch.argmax. What it does is that it gives the highest prediction, the highest probability to be the actual thing, which is normal. So this gives you the highest prediction. Then this then returns only the value, because initially to be a list, each of the predictions will be a list. So we just convert it to just a single value here. So you have your predictions. So now this prediction is based on PyTorch convention, which is PyTorch naming format. So when you're plotting it now, you use that IDX to class. So what this IDX to class receives, what you pass it there is the key. So this time around, the key will be the PyTorch actual format. So that's what you pass in this place. So if you check it, it is from the prediction. So when you pass it here, this dictionary returns the value, which is the actual class. So you have the actual class key. Then you can then decide to then plot the real name, which is from that cat to name JSON file that we specified initially. So what you just need to do is pass the actual class value to this, and to give you the alphabetical representation of it, which is something like this, as you can see it, fire lily and all. So this is just a prediction to see it. Then now our test data now, if you've seen what we've been specifying in Python, this thing actually took me a long while before I got to understand it. But based on what we've been doing, if you see now, this whole loader that I've been doing, creating this data loader and all, it only works when you have a directory where the directory has each of the classes as folders. So that's how this works generally. So you always have to have a parent directory, and that parent directory will have each of the files as classes in the folder. So that's how it must be. If not, it will return an error. So if you pass that test here, if you pass test, you definitely get an error. Let me show you what I mean now. So if I run this, size, I'll just say 16 again, then 0.2. We'll specify it as test. So you see the error it gives. Yeah, so this is the thing. So you said found 0 files in subfolder of flat test. So supported extensions are this. So what this just means is that it didn't find subfolders. So those subfolders are meant to be the classes. So you cannot load that test. If you check it, our train has the thing, but our test should not even have classes because we want to test it and then submit. So there's a way you can go through it now, which is this method now, which I'll show you. So the way that PyTorch loader works, is that, first of all, the way I did it now, because I had to create my own custom class to receive it, and that's what you load into your data loader, is that now, first of all, we know we want to receive a test data. So that test data just contains, what it contains is just files, basically, that I want to predict. But another thing to note is that the sample submission file contains the name of the, this sample submission contains the name, if you've seen it there on Kaggle. Sample submission, yeah. Yeah. So this contains name of all the files in the test directory. So what I just basically did, because I want to get exactly the same way it is arranged in sample submission, if not, you might have issues with your accuracy and scores. So I passed in the directory to my test data. That's what this class is using, the directory where your test is. Then this df is your what do you call it? Is your sample submission file. Then I call this file class, but basically what this just means is the column in your data frame that contains each of those images, because that's what we're going to go and that's what we're going to check in that direction. And then the transforms. So those are the things that we receive. So now, for instance, now this is where we loaded it. The specified test transforms. So here we don't need to apply much augmentation other than just the important ones, which is resizing the image to fit ImageNet size, which is 224, and then normalizing it. You don't need to do flipping, changing color and all, because this is the actual test data. So this is the data load test class here. So like I've said, it takes in your test directory, which is this. Then your test df, which is the sample submission here. Then the class, the column that contains the names of the images, which is this ID. I've specified it there. Then I pass in my test transforms. So from here, my file list now, because I'm going to go through each of the file lists in our directory. So it is just X for X in df, the file class. So this just creates a list of all the images, the names, or rather all the names of the images in that particular column here. So it just creates a list of all these images, which is what we are going to go through. So now we've got the list of all the images, we've gotten our directory, and then we've gotten our transforms. So now what this get item does is that whenever you look through this class, this get item passes so these IDs are just the index for the loop. So that's what this get item. Whenever you run a loop now through this thing, it passes the index as well as each of the files there. So if you look at it now, if you specify batch size of 64, it's going to go through the first 64 thing, which is 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, up to 64. So now what this does now is that for each loop now, it's going to get this IDX. So it will pass the ID. For instance, if the ID is 0, because it's the first loop, it will pass 0 here. Then put 0 in this place. So basically what it does now is that it takes the first image, because that's the ID, the index. It takes the first index of this file list. So it's probably going to be this one here, because this is the first index. Loads it using Pillow. So this is how you load the image with Pillow. After loading it, you apply your transforms. So after applying our transforms, you've got it in PyTorch format. Then you convert it to NumPy, and then return your image and your image name. So this is what I want to do. This is like my own custom thing here. The way PyTorch did it by themselves, if you have seen other ones, is that it returns the image and the image class. But this time around, I've built my custom one. It's not return image and image class. This time around, there's not have any class. So I'm returning the image and then the image name itself, which is this. So that's what I wanted to return. So we then specify our batch size. We say, okay, we don't want to shuffle it, you can specify a number of workers. Then for the testing now, remember, we always have to put this. This is the model we loaded, checkpoint model. You have to specify that an evaluation using evaluation mode. Then this is then a list containing each of the names of the files. And this prediction list contains the prediction itself. So now I will then say for X and Fn in test loader. So remember the way we built it now, it will return the image and the image name. So X is going to be the image, Fn is going to be the file name. That's the whole point of it. Then we storage.nograd. So at this point, you don't want the gradients to change at all. We move it to GPU. Then get our outputs, get the prediction by choosing the maximum, the one with the highest probability. Then we then add it to this list here. So remember, this thing is in batches now. So we just keep appending it to the final list So this list contains the list of all the 5 names we've gone through. And then this prediction will just be the prediction itself. So remember, like I've said, we always have to map it to the actual prediction here. So that's the of this IDX to class. We're going to map it from Python's method to the actual class here. So now we'll have a list of the file name and a list of the predictions for those file names. Then we can then create our submission file here. So that submission file will be the ID. Like we said, it's already specified here. It should be in this format, ID and class. If you put label here or any other thing, or if you put this as something else, it will return an error whenever you make a submission. So you have this, and then you submit it, and you get your submission.csv. So it's going to be stored in this directory here. So something like this, submission.csv. So that was just a walkthrough of how it will be. So I'll send the startup code to the group chat now, so you can just make use of it and then try it out. So the competition is ready on. I'll share the link to the competition soon now on Slack. Hope everyone is on Slack at the moment.